Hello everybody, welcome back to Fanatic Breakdown. I am your host Chris Higgins, bringing you all the latest NFL, NBA, and MLB news. Today I will be rating each NFL team's Week 1 performance. So I basically have 3 criteria for how I'm going to grade these teams. 1, how they won or lost, like how well they did in the game, how many points they lost by, how many points they won by. Number 2 being how I think their players did, and if they should have gotten that win, if they should have gotten that loss, because I do think that matters in the long run. And 3, how I think this shapes the rest of their season, because if you won but all your players performed really bad, I think that does predict the future of your team, and I do think that really does matter as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hop into this, starting with the Thursday night game, NFL kickoff between the Chiefs and the Ravens. And starting out with the winner of this game, the Chiefs, I'm going to give them a B+. I mean, I think they win, and I think they did their business. I think they did it well, and they proved why they won that game against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. But I do think that there were areas of that game that they could have improved on. Of course, it's week 1. They will. I don't have a doubt about that, because they're the freaking Chiefs. Of course they will. But I do think they probably should have won that game by a larger margin. I think they played significantly better than the score shows against the Ravens. And now moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, I have them with a B-, and really the only reason they're a B- is because they lost the game. And this game very well could have gone into overtime if Isaiah Likely's shoes were a half size smaller. Unfortunately, his foot was out of bounds on a final touchdown play, which could have tied that game up, but honestly, that's irrelevant. They did lose the game, but I don't think this is any reason to worry because they're the Ravens. I mean, I have the same logic for the Chiefs. They will iron out the issues that they showed in week 1. There's no doubt about that. And now we'll move on to the Brazil Friday night game between the Eagles and Packers. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I gave them a B+, and I would have given them an A if they didn't struggle so much in the first quarter. 2 turnovers in the first quarter is crazy. I mean, one of them was not Jalen Hurts' fault, it was a bobbled snap, and the other being an interception which he threw into no man's land, double coverage, whatever you want to call it, that was intercepted. But they ended up turning it on in the second and third quarters, which is what really mattered. And Saquon Barkley had an absolute clinic, proving why the Giants should have paid him and not Daniel Jones. Now for the Packers, and this was a hard one, and I have to give them a C+, not because of how they performed in the game, but what this means for the rest of their season. In fact, if what I'm about to talk about didn't happen, they probably would have been in a similar situation with the Eagles, probably around a B+, but due to Jordan Love's injury, I just can't give them anything more than a C+, because depending on how much time he misses, their season might be over. Honestly, the fact that they lost the game on top of losing their starting quarterback for multiple weeks, it's just a really, really bad sign, and I really wish I could give them a better grade. Now moving on to our first Sunday game, the New Orleans Saints against the Carolina Panthers, and starting out with the Saints, who put on an absolute crazy good performance. I'm gonna give them an A-, beating the crap out of the Panthers 47-10. And honestly, I mean, the Panthers are the perfect team to get back on track against. Derek Carr showed that he still has stuff left in the tank. The defense was absolutely phenomenal. The running game between Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams showed as to why they're known as a dynamic duo and what could have been last year. Honestly, I don't think they could have done any better winning that game 47-10, but given the fact that they're still the Saints and I don't think what they showed against the Panthers is something that they can put on every week, I'm giving them an A-. And now moving on to the Panthers, you could have guessed F-, whatever the worst is, they got it. They were the absolute laughingstock of the NFL last week. I mean, even with the additions that they brought in over the offseason last week, they somehow got worse than they were last year. I mean, honestly, I feel bad for Bryce Young because he got sacked so much. I mean, obviously, he didn't exactly perform well either. But this team as a whole is just really bad. Not only that, but they lost their best defensive player in Derek Brown for the entire season. Honestly, no good came out of this game at all. Nothing but an absolute crap show for Carolina. Now moving on to the Vikings and Giants game, I'm going to give the Vikings an A. Honestly, they performed very well. Sam Darnold looked like a competent starting quarterback out there. I think he threw his first 11 of 12 completed passes. He was really, really good. Justin Jefferson also was really, really good. The defense performed well, which is not something you see out of the Vikings every day. And honestly, I think they proved that they might be a sneaky wildcard team if they continue to perform like they did against the Giants. And the Giants, I have to give them an F. Their defense was not good. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is good, but he's always good. Daniel Jones, I mean, showed that he robbed the Giants of a lot of money. And over his past, I think, 2 seasons, he's thrown more touchdowns to the other team than he has his own team. I mean, even their rookie receiver Malik Neighbors seemed pretty frustrated, and it's just week 1. Not saying that I don't think the Giants can win a few games this year, because honestly, I do think they can if Daniel Jones slightly turns it around, but I wouldn't really bet on it, so I just have to give them an F. And this is where things really start to get interesting, because now we have the Patriots and Bengals game, and the winners of this game, the New England Patriots, I have to give an A. And honestly, looking at the score of this game, my jaw dropped. This is one team I did not expect to get a win in week 1, and they did it. I mean, Jacoby Brissett looked like a pretty solid game manager, but what you really have to give credit to is, one, the running back Ramondre Stevenson, who looked like a superstar, and two, that defense. I mean, that was really, really good. And also, you got to give your flowers to rookie head coach Gerard Mayo, who performed extremely well under the circumstances playing the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1. And now moving on to Cincinnati, I gotta give them a C-. And honestly, I would have gone lower, but I don't really think this has a bearing for the future of the season, because typically they always perform extremely poorly in week 1. That's just been a theme under the Joe Burrow Bengals. And 2, they're the Bengals. They should turn it around. I'm not sure it'll be in week 2 because they play the Kansas City Chiefs. But either way, extremely disappointing to lose to the New England Patriots in week 1 of all teams. And for me, it's another shocking victory. We have the Falcons-Steelers game in which the Steelers stole the W. I have to give them an A. I think they played well. I mean, they played a quarterback who was not expected to play in week 1, Justin Fields, who showed pretty good flashes of future greatness. I mean, he had a few really good open plays, ran the ball really well, and of course the Steelers defense, which is also always really good, kind of in the same boat as New England, played well, so I have to give them an A. And for the Falcons, I also matched the Bengals grade of C-, mostly because they should have performed well in this game. Kirk Cousins should have played a little bit better than he did. That defense didn't perform as well as I thought they would. They still held the Steelers to just 18 points, so I think they did well, but ultimately I think the offense is to blame for this loss. Just ultimately disappointing, but also, once again, you can't really freak out because it is just week 1, but not a good sign of things to come. And now we have the Texans and Colts, an interdivision rivalry game, and in my opinion, this is one of the most interesting games of the week, one of the most fun games to watch of the week. And to start out with the winners of the game, I have the Texans getting an A. The final score is 29-27, and honestly, I don't think you could ask for a better game to watch, but I mean, CJ Stroud went out and performed really well. He got Stephon Diggs the ball, which is really something you need to do to keep him happy, because Lord knows that Diva would request a trade again if he didn't. But honestly, I can't really fault the defense, because I do think both would need to make improvements if you don't want to see another game like this, kind of a little bit high scoring. But I do think both teams played extremely well, which leads me to the Colts grade of an A. I think both teams played extremely well, and I think the Colts had a chance to win this game. And personally, I think it's more impressive for the Colts to stay in a game with the Texans, who have one of the most high-powered, high-octane offenses in the NFL. And the fact that their defense was able to hold up, I mean, a defense not exactly known for being one of the most fantastic in the NFL. Still a very good defense, but I digress. And also, their offense really turned it on. Anthony Richardson, in his first game back after injury, had one of the most impressive passes I think I've ever seen, hitting Alec Pierce for like a 60-yard touchdown bomb off his back foot. I think that offense was really clicking well, and I think that's a really good sign of things to come, even though they lost the game. And once again, another really interesting game. We have the Bills and Cardinals, starting out with the winner of that game once again, the Bills, with a B+. And really, I could have given them a higher grade, but I do think their defense struggled a little bit. And I also think that they probably should have had a better first half. I think it's really impressive that they came back to win in the second half, because the Cardinals were really clicking in that first half. But I think Josh Allen did everything right, especially with the minimal weapons that he has on that team now. He did stuff to the best of his ability. And honestly, I think the clutch gene of this team in the second half really gave them this B+ and the victory. Now moving on to the Arizona Cardinals, I'll give them a B. Honestly, I think their meltdown in the second half is really what bumped me down a little bit. Maybe it might have even been an A- if they didn't. I also think they would have won this game if they didn't break down in the second half, but also, once again, that does not matter. But I think Kyler Murray played really well, especially coming back off of his injuries. The only thing, I'm not happy that they didn't get Marvin Harrison the ball. I mean, that's what you picked him to do, and he had one catch for 4 yards. That's not good. I also think their defense played really well for what they were given, especially against Josh Allen, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So I'm giving them a B because I think this is a really, really good sign of things to come for this team, and a possibility of having a pretty decent record by the end of the year. Now we have the Chicago Bears against the Tennessee Titans, and this was a very interesting game, to say the least. The Bears did end out coming on top, 24-17 final score, but no part of me thinks that they should have won this game. Caleb Williams and that offense were straight up horrendous. He threw less than 50% of his passes complete and just 93 yards. I don't know how you win this game, but even the Titans head coach, Brian Callahan, came out and said that if they just punted on first down, they might have won this game. But I'm going to give the Chicago Bears a C just because I don't think you can bet on that offense being that bad every week, but I also don't think you can bet on that defense being that good every week. And now moving on to the Tennessee Titans, because I have really nothing else else to say about Chicago. I'm giving them a D+, because honestly, their offense was just really bad, but their defense was good enough to keep them in that game. So they're kind of in the same boat as Chicago, but their offense was just that much worse. Will Levis threw a game-ending pick 6 to give the Chicago Bears the victory, and honestly, I don't think either team deserved to win here. It just so happened to be Chicago, but I have more faith in Chicago to turn it around and be a good team than I do in Tennessee, mostly because of the division Tennessee's in. It's a very tough division, the AFC South, not an easy one to play in, so I'm gonna have to give them a D+. Now moving on to another AFC South team, ironically enough, it's the Jaguars and Dolphins. I'm gonna start out with the winners of this game, Miami, giving them a B+. They're kind of in the same boat as a lot of other teams I've already mentioned, where they turned it on the second half, but they played extremely poorly in the first half, so I'm gonna give them a B+ here. They did end up getting the win by a very, very small margin. I think what really turned this game around for Miami was the 80-yard touchdown bomb to Tyreek Hill, and honestly, if you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the celebration, that was the most hilarious thing I've seen in a long time. The handcuff celebration. Look up, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look it up. I don't feel like talking about it. But I think the Dolphins proved as to why they're good, and honestly, the Thursday night game for week 2 has already happened, so I thought about changing this grade, but I'm not grading on week 2 yet. But the two-way injury that was sustained is honestly just devastating. It's really sad to watch, and he's pondering retirement at this point. But for their week 1 performance and what that meant for the rest of their season before week 2, I have to give them a B+. And for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to give them a B-. I think they played pretty well. The offense and defense were extremely inconsistent, but I think that's something that all Jaguars fans are used to at this point. Tyson Campbell ended up getting hurt. He should miss a few weeks, which really doesn't help. But the Jaguars, I do have faith in. Maybe it's my Jacksonville bias as a man born and raised in Jacksonville. I'm still giving them a B-. Maybe I shouldn't, but that'll be up to you guys. Now we're moving on to the Seahawks and Broncos game, and moving on to the winners of that game. We'll start with the Seahawks winning 26-20, and I'll give them a B rating. Honestly, I think they played well enough to win, but that Broncos team was not very good. The offense for Seattle left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. Luckily, that defense is really well. Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen are a very dynamic secondary duo, and they played well enough to win. I'm not so sold on Geno Smith being the guy for Seattle, but he did well enough to get them the win in week 1, so I'm giving them a B. Now moving on to the Broncos, I'm giving them a C+. Honestly, I don't think they played near well enough to even score 20 points here or be in this game. They only lost by 6, so I thought they should have lost by a lot more. Bo Nix was very questionable in his first start, you could say, throwing 2 interceptions, didn't throw great percentage, and passes over 10 yards. He was not very good. Did score a rushing touchdown, so he showed some promise there. But overall, the defense held its own. It usually does, so I'm not really surprised about that. But the offense didn't really show much more improvement than it did under Russell Wilson over the past few seasons. But we'll see if maybe he can show a little bit of development in the coming weeks. Now for the Chargers-Raiders game, and this is one of the more predictable grades I think that you guys will see. The Chargers ended up winning this game 22-10, and I don't think that's really surprising at all. So I'm going to give the Chargers an A. This is the game that they were supposed to win, and they were supposed to win easily, which is exactly what they did. I don't really have much to say about this, but I will say Justin Herbert looked pretty good with a new regime of receivers. In the running game with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards looked pretty good. And for the Raiders, honestly, I'm not surprised. I want to see Gardner Minshew succeed as a Jaguars fan because, of course I do, right? But that team just looks in total disarray right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see Devontae Adams get traded relatively soon because he was frustrated before the season started, and now he has even more reason to. And it didn't really look like there was anything good to go off of for that team, so I have to give them a D. And now moving on to the Cowboys and Browns, another blowout, 33-17 final score with the Cowboys coming out on top. I'm going to give them an A. I think they've showed what they have basically the last 5 or so seasons being really good in the regular season. I don't think that anything about that has changed. Honestly, it's really going to be playoff success that they have to worry about, but they're always good in the regular season, so I'm going to give them an A here because they deserve it after that week 1 performance. And for the Browns, I'm giving them a D- because they were not very good. Mostly because of Deshaun Watson, who is not very good. Honestly, I don't think I have to say very much else. Also, they lost David Njoku. And I think the really interesting thing is that this team is built for a championship. The roster looks really, really good, but their quarterback is holding them back. They paid this guy, what, $250 million guaranteed to have a nearly sub 50 quarterback rating and throw less than 200 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Mind you, he's not usually healthy, and maybe it's just the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the guy coming out, but honestly, at some point, if he keeps playing like this, you have to look at Jameis Winston and be like, get in the game, bro. Now, after I calmed myself down talking about Deshaun Watson, we're gonna move on now to the Buccaneers and Commanders game. Honestly, a game that I think both teams had a good game. The Buccaneers, I'm giving an A+. I mean, the defense held its own, and I think Baker Mayfield had a fantastic game. I think he had the best quarterback performance of the week. He showed why he got paid, and they had the best graded PFF receiver in the league, Chris Godwin. Not only that, Mike Evans also had a fantastic game. I think overall, the Buccaneers had a really great game, and they deserve an A+. They're a playoff team. And I'm giving the Commanders a B. I think Jaden Daniels showed a lot of promise. He had a pretty good first week. Of course, the defense kind of struggled, but we expected that, and now Manuel Forbes is out with a thumb injury. But I think holding your own against a team like the Buccaneers, who are a playoff team, is really impressive. So I'm giving them a B. Now we have the Lions and Rams game, in which the Lions came out on top 26-20 in an overtime thriller. And I'm going to give them an A. I think beating the Rams is always a very difficult task, and both teams, I think, played really, really well. Honestly, I don't really have much to say. I think this game really could have gone either way, and the fact that the Lions came out on top isn't surprising. I think if the Rams came out on top, it wouldn't have been surprising, but I think they went out and defended their home turf well, so good on them, and I'm going to give them an A. And for the Rams, I'm giving them a B+. I thought about matching the Lions with an A because this game really could have gone either way, but I knocked them down a little bit just because Puka Nacua has been placed on IR, which is a big loss for their team. I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL at this point, so losing him for at least 4 games is a pretty big knock. I do think they'll survive, but that is why I'm not matching the Lions grade of an A. I'm giving them a B+. Now moving on to the final week 1 game, I'll finally let you guys go after this. We have the Monday night game for the 49ers against the New York Jets. And I'm going to give the 49ers an A. They went in and they took care of business. I think the real MVP here is Jordan Mason, who had 28 carries for 147 yards and 1 touchdown. That's over 5 yards a carry in Christian McCaffrey's absence. Brock Purdy had a pretty good game as a game manager there, through 231 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but he did his job well. The defense took care of business, and for the Jets, I'm giving them a C+. Honestly, they got manhandled here. They were not good, but the only positive to this game is that Aaron Rodgers did not snap his Achilles on the 4th play of the season. But other than that, I mean, Rodgers threw 167 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was okay. Breece Hall averaged under 3.5 yards a carry, so not much to look forward to there. And the defense wasn't good. They allowed 32 points, but I do look forward to seeing if they can turn it around in the next few games. And with that said, that is all I have for you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I truly do appreciate it. But with that out of the way, I'm your host, Chris Higgins. This has been Fanatic Breakdown. Always remember, I love you, Jesus loves you, and enjoy this football season, y'all.